everybody, welcome back to the channel, Think Outside the Board. I'm your host, Brian Toohey. If it's your first time here, then welcome. Today, I'm doing a first impressions video on Mercado de Lisboa, which is by Vital Lacerda, who may very well be my favorite designer of all time. Now, this is a little bit different from him. He generally designs very heavy games, and he has taken part of Lisboa, which is my favorite of all of his games, and he's taken one mechanic out of that game and made a thinky, medium light filler game out of it, essentially. So it is for 1 to 4 players. It is medium light, and this game is being published by Eagle Gryphon Games, and they publish pretty much all of Vital's fancy big box games. They also did Rococo Deluxe Edition last year. They do Age of Steam, Railways of the World, just lots of good stuff, and lots of well-produced games with really nice components. It is designed by Vital Lacerda, and I'm going to put all of his games up there, but he has designed games like The Gallerist, Venus Deluxe, Kanban EV, On Mars, Lisboa, my favorite, Escape Plan, CO2 Second Chance, and I feel like I might be leaving 1 or 2 out, but those are a lot of his games. And Ian O'Toole usually does all of the art and the graphic design for his games. Not so. And this version, and this game, the art is done by Pedro Soto. And while this isn't Pedro's first published game, he doesn't have any games that are in the top 1,000 at Board Game Geek. So I'm just going to put his top 3 games up over there. Vital also had some help on the design with this one by Julian Pombo, and he has worked on some of Vital's other games, some of his other recent games, helping out with solo modes and things like that. But this is actually his first published game that he has his name on as a co-designer. Now, I am going to show you how the game plays. I'm not going to give you a full teach because this is a first impressions video and I've only played it a couple times. But I am going to show you how the game works and the mechanics, and then I will talk to you about what I think of it, my first impressions after playing it just a couple times. So before I show you the board for Mercado de Lisboa, I wanted to show you the box and the insert because they work so well for this game, this lighter game, which you're going to want quick setup with. So let me show you how that works here. When you open the box, you're going to have the rules here. You'll have the board here, which I've already got set up underneath. If you want to play with hidden money, which is recommended, you've got these player screens that also have the player actions on them. You've got a nice Eagle Gryphon felt bag here where you're going to put the stand tiles. That's what you're going to be using for most of the game. And then in the insert, you have this. You have all 4 player colors right here. So if you're playing with a color, you can just take them out. That's all you need for a player. You need these 4 types of tiles, which are already stored here, sorted. So all you really have to do is take out a stack and put it down over here on the board, and then just pull out the top 2 tiles, and you're ready to go. Now, if you want to shuffle them, you can shuffle them, but that's how easy it is just to get them out of the box and to set up the game, which I think is paramount. I did a video recently on a game called Garinto, which is a really neat little puzzle game, but that game requires that you set up all the tiles every game, kind of one by one, and it can take almost a third of the time to set up the game that it takes to actually play it. So it's nice to have this insert which actually helps you with setup. Now you have these other tiles, these are restaurant tiles. 2 of these are called pub tiles, which have a beer on it. This one. So if you have 4 players, the 4th player is gonna get one of these pub tiles. Otherwise, they'll just leave it in the box. You'll take the other 11 restaurant tiles and you will randomly place them on the areas of the board that have this square here. And you're going to place them with the dark side down, so they're not colored. So you can shuffle them any way you want and place them like this. You've got some money here, which I won't take out, but there's cardboard money. You can replace it with something nicer if you have it. If you don't, there's the money. Then you're going to draw 3 tiles randomly here. You'll put them in the stand tile display like this. And then every player will get 3 tiles to start the game. And that's it. You're set up. You're ready to go. What did that take? About a minute? Oh, right, and each player will also start the game with 1 coin. So if you've ever played Vital Lacerda's Lisboa, which might be my favorite game, he's my favorite designer and it's my favorite game of his, so it's definitely in competition as my favorite game. But if you've ever played that game, you are rebuilding the city of Lisboa after earthquake damage, water damage, and fire damage. And there's an area of the board where you're reconstructing buildings. It's one of several mechanics in that game, half a dozen to a dozen different mechanics. But what they've done is they've taken that mechanic and they've made a whole smaller game around it. They've just kind of taken that mechanic out and built what is really sort of a medium-light little puzzle strategy game, almost a filler. So that is Mercado de Lisboa. And in this game, you're going to be doing one of 4 actions on your turn, okay? You're either going to be taking one of those 3 tiles in front of you, choosing a place to place them on the board here, and placing it out. Now, when you place a stand tile like this, you're going to have to pay 1 coin to place this tile, plus a coin for every other stand that's in the same row or in the same column, whichever is more. So you'll just figure out which one has more stands already in it, and you'll pay that amount. So it could be 2, 3, could be anywhere from 1 to 5 coins. Or you can take one of these customer tiles. Now, if you do that and you're placing it in a row, you can only place it in a row that has the same number of stand tiles or less. So that means the customer needs to have the same number of people or more than the number of stands in the column or row you're placing it in. It also has to have one of the ingredients that match at least one of your tiles. So for instance, I couldn't place that. I could, however, place this because this guy has tomatoes on it. And when you do this, you're going to score a point for the tile that you're scoring. If there are sort of related restaurants in the area that would benefit from this tile, which for tomato, it means pizza. So there is a restaurant tile over here that makes pizza. That's not going to help me, and that's not going to help me. But if this tile was, say, here, instead of scoring 1 point for this, I would get 2 points for that tile. And then you will multiply that by the number of people on this tile. In this case, it would be 1, 2 times 1 for a total of 2 points. Now, if it was later in the game and I had a bunch of these tiles out here, so let's say it's later in the game. I've already got 3 chicken stands built. I am next to 2 meat restaurants here, which are both going to use chicken. I'm also next to this pub, which is sort of a wild, so it's going to benefit any sort of stand next to it. And then let's say I place this tile right here. And the only reason I can do this is because there are 4 stands in this row. And this is hard to do because the restaurant tiles are set up at the beginning of the game such that you'll never be able to get more than 3 stand tiles in the same row or column unless you reorganize some of these restaurant tiles. But if this had happened and I had built these and I was placing this is how this would score. So I'll get 1 point for this chicken stand here, but I'll also get another point for these 2 restaurants next to it. So that's a total of 3 points. For this over here, I'm going to get a point for this chicken stand, but I'm also going to get a point for this restaurant and this pub because they are also adjacent to this tile. So that's another 3 points. Then I'll get 1 point for this chicken stand. This one will not receive any bonus points because there's nothing next to it. But that's a total of 3, 6, 7 points. And I'm going to multiply all those points by the number of people on this tile, which is 4. So that would get me 28 points for that move. Now, whenever this happens, anyone who has another stand in the row that also triggers off of this tile will also score their stand tile. In this case, the green player wouldn't be able to do that because he has tomatoes, and this is scoring chicken, so he doesn't get to score. But if he had had a chicken restaurant, or if there was something else on this tile in addition to chicken, and he maybe had a stand that dealt with that, then he would also score that tile. So this would be a big move. That's a 28 point gain, whereas this other one that would have been a first move would have only scored 2 points. So those are the two of the moves that you can do on your turn. You can place a stand tile and score it immediately if there are customers already out on the board to score it. Or you can place a customer and then you will score every applicable stand in that row or in that column. Now the third thing that you can do, if you've already taken one of these tiles previously, and you might get one because you might decide to place a stand on that tile. And if I do that, I'm going to get to take this restaurant tile into my inventory. So a third thing that I could do, I could place this restaurant tile back out on the board. And if I do that, I'm going to flip it over to the colored side and it can't be moved again. So they can only be taken into your inventory when you place one of these over it if it's still grayed out, if it's on the back side. But once you put it back on the board, you flip it to the color side and then it's there for good. When you do that, that's going to earn you 1 money. That's all. And the last thing that you can do on your turn, you can just take a money from the bank. Now, if all players take a money from the bank in a round, so it goes around and everyone takes 1 money, that's going to trigger the end of the game. Now, assuming that doesn't happen, the game will be triggered when you either have only 4 restaurant spaces left, so when someone places a restaurant or a stand leaving only 4 of these empty spaces, the game will end at the end of that player's turn. Or if someone places one of these customer tiles, leaving only 4 blank customers, so all the rest of them will be filled, the game will also end at the end of that player's turn. Now, once the game ends, you'll just count up all the money that you have, and you will deduct 1 money for any of these restaurant tiles that you have in your inventory, and that will be your total, and that will be the end of the game. Now again, if you are using these, the money is a hidden resource, which means people won't know who's in the lead. That's probably not a bad way to play the game. So you can play with the money hidden or you can play with it open, however you would choose. But that's the entire game. You're either playing a stand tile and scoring it, you're playing a customer tile and scoring any stand tiles in that row or in that column, you are placing out a restaurant tile, one of the circle ones, or you're taking a coin. It goes around and around like that until the game ends, and then the player with the most money wins. Boom. Okay, so here's the thing. I don't really like super light games that much because I feel that there's not enough choices in them often. There's not enough... The games aren't compelling. They're over too fast. I like big, meaty games with complex choices, complex moves. So if I do play a smaller game, I just want to have those good choices in there. And this game, I'm not really sure how good the choices are because it is so repetitive. You've got a certain number of tiles, you're only doing a couple of things, and I think that once you play this game a bunch of times, maybe a dozen times, I think it's going to get very samey and sort of very predictable. However, one of my big issues with games, and I think part of the reasons people will rip smaller games apart is because you play them often and you play them fast. And so if you're playing Twilight Imperium or something like that, which takes between 4 and 12 hours to play, you might only play that game once a month at most. And any heavy games they're harder to get to the table. But a light game that you can get to the table and you can teach it in a couple minutes, you can set it up in a minute or two, and you can just play it within a half an hour, that game can get played a lot, which means that there is a lot of criticism, I think, on smaller games because people can play them a lot more. You can play those smaller games hundreds of times. And so the average gamer is going to realize very quickly if it's well designed or not because they're going to be able to play it a lot. And they're going to see behind the curtain and see the design in this. What I do think is really good about this game is the ease of setup. It is a game that you can get out on the table and play very, very quickly, which for a lighter game is what you want. That is exactly what you want. And that element of it, I think, is fantastic. As for how repetitive and samey is this game going to get, I have my theories, but I won't really know until I play it more. And eventually I will probably do a full teach-in review, and if I do that, I will come back having played this thing probably a dozen, 2 dozen times, and I'll have a better answer for you. I can tell you that there's a solo mode in here, and it's sort of a campaign. It's like 9 games. And so you're going to play these different 9 games. You're going to score points for each of those 9 games. You're going to add them all up, and you're going to have a score, and that'll tell you kind of how well you did. I've played the first of those games in that solo campaign, and you can either basically score 10, 20, or 30 points, but you have to do really well to even score 10 points. And I was not able to score any points. And it became pretty evident to me that it had a lot to do with what tiles were available and what tiles were going to come out in the game. I made pretty good choices. I've only played this game a couple times, but I've played Lisboa a few times, so I feel like I have a pretty good handle on the game itself and the kind of moves and the structure and the way it works. I understand it well. So I knew what I was doing, and I think it became obvious to me that my score was limited purely because of the tiles that were available. So I do plan on playing through that entire solo campaign. I'll see how I like it, but I'm wondering if I'm going to come to the same conclusion with the other games in that solo campaign, that it's going to be very, very dependent on the tiles that are out. So even if you play well, you need to play well, and you need to have luck on your side to score those points. And if that is the case with the entire solo campaign, I probably will just play it through once, and I doubt I'll come back to it. I do plan on bringing this thing to meetups once I can play with live people again, and I think it'll be a great little game as a filler to play at the beginning or the end of the night. And as I said before, once I kind of play it a bunch of times, I'll have a better idea on the replay value of it. The reason it'll probably stay in my collection regardless is because it is a good little thinky filler, and those are hard to come by. And I'll always be able to whip it out and play it with people who haven't played it a lot. So the other reason it's probably going to stay in my collection for a while, if not forever, is that it is a great introduction to get people to play a Vital Lacerda game. Vital's games are on the heavier side. I mean, they're heavy. He makes very heavy games, and I think they can be intimidating to some gamers. But if you use this as an introduction, if you get a lighter gamer to play this, and it's not hard to understand, obviously, it's not hard to play, they can get comfortable with this and familiar with this. And then maybe you can introduce them to Lisboa, and they'll already have a foothold in that game. And Vital Lacerda's games, I mean, they have different mechanics from game to game, but they have the same art style, they have the same artist, except for this one. And so if you learn one game and you understand it, it really kind of helps you learn the others. So I think this could be sort of a doorway into Lisboa for a lot of people, which could then sort of open up the Vital Lacerda board game world for them. And as far as I'm concerned, that makes it sort of indispensable. But that's it. That's my feelings on the game. It's a great thinky little filler. Not sure about the replay value yet, but it is going to be a great introduction to Vital Lacerda games for anyone. Now, right now, I have it rated about a 7.5, 8 in my head. That I'm sure that number will change over time, whether it goes up or goes down. But I'm very happy to have a good, solid, little, light, thinky Vital Lacerda game in my collection that I can play or introduce people to as it's appropriate. So that brings us to the end of this video. Thank you very much for watching. I hope this helped make a decision whether or not this is a game for you. Please consider liking and subscribing this video. If you want to ask questions or leave comments down below, you can do that. And if you'd like to be notified whenever I publish videos in the future, you can also hit that alarm bell after you've subscribed. So thank you for watching. Have a great day and take care, and I will see you in the next video.